Hello everybody again, it's Mr. A. I miss you guys. I really miss my classes. I miss being able to teach. I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy, maintaining social distances and sneezing into your elbows and washing your hands a lot and doing all those things you're supposed to do. This will pass. We'll get past this. We'll be together again. In the meantime, we're going to talk today about Roman drama. Now the Roman drama, we're going to start off about 400 BC, which is, again, just kind of a general time when Roman drama can begin. And because what happens right around 400 BC is that Rome conquers Greece. And what the Romans did, the Romans took a look around at Greece and they discovered that the Greeks were better than them at pretty much everything. They had better architecture, they had better medicine, they had better religions, they had better philosophy. They were better at everything, except for war. That's the one thing the Romans were better at, which is why the Romans conquered them. But the Romans were smart enough to look around and realize, okay, these guys know what they're doing, and so they start kind of copying everything that the Greeks were doing. And so as a result, as the Romans continue to conquer the rest of the world, they end up spreading a lot of Greek culture around as they do that. But the Romans are very different than Greeks. They have very different mindsets, very different temperaments. I know we tend to think of the Romans and the Greeks as the same kind of thing because they're all old people that lived a long, long time ago and basically only survive now in statues, right? But they were very, very different. For one thing, the Romans were a lot less religious. The Greeks cared a lot about making sure that their gods were happy. The Romans kind of thought of religion as kind of a convenient thing. In fact, it was very common when the Romans conquered a people to just go ahead and let them keep worshiping their religions as much as they wanted to. So long as they also gave their allegiance to Rome, they didn't particularly care. Religion was kind of a means to an end for them. The other difference is that the Romans were a lot more bloodthirsty. They loved war. They loved fighting. They loved watching people fight. The whole idea is about the gladiatorial combat where they would have the two guys give them both a sword, let them fight and see which one would kill the other one. That didn't just get made up for the movies. That was a real thing. And the Romans loved watching it. So as they start making this theater stuff and they start bringing in this theater stuff from Greece, they kind of change it around and make it into their own thing. So it's a lot less religious and a lot more exciting and bloodthirsty. And one major change that happens is that the purpose of theater for them changes very much. The Greeks, the purpose of theater was education, religion. It was a way to reflect on your lives and what you ought to do. For the Romans, no. It was entertainment. It was there for fun. It was there to create enjoyment and relax and enjoy yourselves. Now, as I told you before, anytime when you have the purpose of theater is entertainment, look around and somebody's getting paid. And it's true, there's people there that were trying to make money. However, it was not generally speaking the actors that were trying to make money because most of the actors were slaves. Not all of them. There were some actors that were free men, but even the free men tended to be very much looked down upon. A slave was generally the people that were making this theater. In fact, some of the writers were even slaves or recently freed slaves. Now, slavery among the Romans was very different than we expect today. First of all, it's very, very common. It's been said that it was as common for a Roman household to have slaves as it is for an American household to have a dog. Most places had slaves. But it wasn't as similar to what we see in the past of America either. For one thing, it generally had nothing to do with what race you are. There were dark-skinned Roman citizens and light-skinned slaves, and the opposite also. That didn't matter. If I was a slave, what it meant is that my country had been conquered by the Romans, and as a result, I was now a slave until I could get my freedom. But that happened actually quite a bit. Romans would free their slaves either in their wills, or if the slave has done some great form of service to them, they would, as a reward, give them their freedom. So it wasn't nearly as permanent as a thing as it was in our country. But anyway, the actors were usually slaves. That means the actors were usually not making a lot of money at it. The people that would make the money would be either the person that owned the slaves or the person that owned the theater, that owned the building where they were working at. Now, as jobs go for slaves, this is actually a pretty good job. A slave could be asked to do anything, right? I mean, it could say, okay, you slaves, I want you guys to go out and shovel out all the poop out of my stable. And these slaves, since you're good actors, why don't you instead make up a play for me? Well, now, you want to be on that side, huh? That's a whole lot less work and a whole lot more prestige. And generally, you wanted slaves that could do that because they could then make you a lot of money. So, not the worst job in the world for a slave. But anyway, the purpose was entertainment. Roman theater was not intended to teach any great truth to people. The best way I can help people understand is by looking at something else that we have that's usually not intended to teach a lot of great truth, which is television. Now, some of you are saying, no, I've learned much great important things that have changed my life from television. Okay, but that's not typical. Most television is there for fun. It's there for enjoyment. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what that means is if it's there for enjoyment, you can do things that the Greeks never would have thought to do. And the Romans kind of invented a lot of these things, styles, I guess, of elements of theater that the Greeks never would have done. One of them was something called stock characters. A stock character is a character that shows up again and again and again in lots of different plays. Now, I don't mean that they're the same names, like you wouldn't have a whole bunch of characters named Dracula or something like that, lots of plays about Dracula. That's not what I mean. What I mean is you'd have the same kind of characters that would show up in lots of different plays. And we do this today as well. I'll prove it to you. Let's say that you're watching a TV show that takes place in a high school. And you got your main character, he's leaning up to his locker talking to his girl or whatever, and another character walks in, that character's wearing glasses. Tell me everything you know about that character now. Well, they're wearing glasses, so they're smart. They are a nerd, which means that they spend all their time playing Dungeons and Dragons. They're not very good with the ladies, and they don't play any sport. They play chess, is what they do, and they do their homework on time, and not being all that popular. You get all of that just because of the fact that they're wearing glasses. Now, does that reflect reality at all? When you look around the school, are all the smartest people wearing glasses? No. Are all the people wearing glasses the smartest people in the school? No. So why do you recognize that the guy wearing glasses has to be the smart guy? Because that's a stock character. A stock character, a character that shows up in story after story after story. And so we recognize that. It's kind of like shorthand. If you put a character in glasses, you know, okay, that's who that is. That way you don't have to spend 20, 30 minutes describing that character. You can just know exactly who it is. Now, the Greeks would never do that because it doesn't teach you anything about real life. But for the Romans, teaching about real life wasn't the point. The point of it was to get right into the story. And so they would have characters like the clever servant and the strict father and the hero that is the lover that wants to get this girl to like him or something like this. And they would have these kind of stock characters that would show up again and again. Now, the second thing that was kind of similar to that was repetition. What this means is they had many of the same plots that would happen over and over again. And again, we do this as well. I'll give you an example. Let's suppose you watch in a movie, see if you can tell me what movie I'm talking about. You've got a guy and he meets a girl, but he's lying about something. Some little thing, but he's lying about it when he meets her. But anyway, they fall in love, and they end up getting together, they hang around together, and they fall in love, they go out together, until eventually it looks like they might get married or something like that, and then the secret comes out in a public place, and the woman is humiliated and very, very angry. She might even slaps him in the face, and then he walks away, and then they're separated for a little while, and they have this musical montage showing how much they miss each other, and then the guy turns to a friend and says, you know, I'm better off without her. I'd rather be with you, just kind of hanging around with my boy. Look, you're really happy. And his friend says, I'm not happy. You were better off with her. And the guy says, oh gee, maybe you're right. He goes back to the woman again in a public place. And he says, I love you. I will always love you. And she says, but what about the thing you lied about? And he says, that doesn't matter because I love you and I'll never lie to you again. And she says, well, I love you too. Oh really? Then kiss me. And they kiss and everyone around them claps out loud. Which movie did I just tell you about? Yeah, every single romantic comedy. Every one. They all work that way. So why do we keep watching them? Well, because they keep being good. They continue to be a good story that's entertaining. The Greeks would never do that, because once you've learned that story, why would you need to get another story telling you the same thing? But to the Romans, the point wasn't to learn things. The point was to enjoy yourself. So they would have the same stories again and again. You would have the same guy that likes a girl, but she's got a strict father, and so he's got a clever servant that helps find a way to be able to get the girl for him, and it would happen again and again and again, just with like some different characters in different situations or something. That's repetition. And again, that happens in TV and movies when the purpose is to entertain you. It's not really to teach you any great, deep, important truth. It's just to be entertaining. Okay, so let's talk about some of the playwrights. Now, there's a lot of playwrights in Rome, and it's not like the Greeks where we have a number of other plays. We still are missing a lot. It still was almost 2,000 years ago. But we have a few more. We're going to talk about, the first guy we're going to talk about is a man named Seneca. Now, Seneca is not technically a playwright. In fact, he's a politician and a tutor. So he was a teacher. He was like a private teacher of rich Roman citizens, and then eventually he also becomes a senator and an important person because of some of the people he tutors end up becoming like emperors and things like this. In any case, though, as a teacher, that means he needs to teach people about Greece, because as I said, Greece was considered to be the great mine of education and intelligence, and so he tried to teach them about that. Now, what that meant as far as a playwright goes is that Seneca ended up writing Romanized versions of Greek plays. And you'll find a lot of the Greek plays were a lot of the Roman plays, I should say, were kind of Greek plays that were kind of changed around for a Roman audience. But nothing is more obvious, I think, than in Seneca's plays, because a lot of them are like the same exact stories, except for just altered a bit. The play I want you to know about that he wrote is called Medea. Yeah, you already know about Medea. I've already told you about that myth, and this is basically the same story, so I'm not going to like act it out again. But it's the same story, except for this one has a couple of important differences that lets you see the difference between the Greeks and the Romans. The first is that it is much more bloody. See, like in the Euripides version, you don't see the kids die on stage. Instead, Medea's like, oh, how should I do this terrible thing? And yet I must. And she leaves the stage. And then the chorus is still on stage, and they talk about what a terrible thing is happening. You can kind of hear the children screaming in the background, but no, you don't see anything. And then Medea comes back on stage and says, oh, the deed is done. You don't see them die. But if you're a Roman, and you're making a play about a woman that kills her children, you're darn sure going to show that, because that's entertainment. In Seneca's version, there's a great big tower constructed on the middle of the stage. Jason comes to the foot of the tower and he's like, Medea, what are you doing? Medea sticks her head out of the window at the top, takes up their little baby child and says, Jason, this is your child and you've had this coming. She cuts his throat, throws him out of the window, and he lands splat in a bloody mess at Jason's feet. Yeah, people usually ask me at this point, do they really kill a baby? Yeah, probably not. Although knowing the Romans, who can say? Most likely, though, this was like a doll or some sort. In fact, a lot of people say this probably was never even done. A lot of people believe that Seneca's plays were all what are called closet dramas, or in other words, plays that you were only supposed to read and not actually see performed. But whatever, it certainly was never staged in his lifetime. It has been staged since then in various different ways. But that's one big difference, is that it was a lot more bloody. The second difference, though, is that where Euripides looked at Medea and said, maybe Medea had a good reason to it, maybe Jason was the real villain. For Seneca, he's like, no. Medea is a monster. Medea is a monster, and Jason is this poor, sad soul who married a woman that he shouldn't have married, and he's paid for it. That, in fact, is the message of Seneca's Medea, is, boys, don't trust those foreign girls. A lot of his audience were the young Roman citizens, the young Roman children that he was teaching, and his message was for them was, when you go and get married, marry a good Roman girl. Because, you see, Seneca was a bit of a racist. Many people of his time period were. He considered that Romans were the greatest of all possible people, Greeks were pretty good too, and everybody else was a barbarian. So that was his message, is stay away from the foreign girls. So that's Seneca. The other playwright that I want you to know about from this time period is a little bit more of a typical Roman playwright. Seneca, as I said, was a bit stuffy. He was a bit more of an educator, more than actually trying to entertain you. But then we came to Plautus. Plautus is a comedy writer. And what he wrote was lots of comedies. And we still have a lot of them, although not all of them. It's thought that Flautist may have written as many as like 100 different plays. It's hard to tell because there's a lot of other playwrights that actually considered, like, put his name on their play in order to be able to have it get a little bit more attention. So how many of those plays were really his, we don't know. But we certainly have a lot of them. We have upwards of 20 of them still. And he's had a lot of great fans. He had one really big fan that you've probably heard of. His name was William Shakespeare. Shakespeare loved his plays. He loved them enough that he took a number of them and kind of copied them and changed some of the names and republished them as his own versions of them later on. We'll talk about that when we get into Shakespeare and the Renaissance. But the play that I want you to know about that he wrote is called The Twin Menaechmi. Now, the thing about the Twin Menaechmi is that it is very complicated and very funny, and usually I have you guys get up here and act it out, and it's one of the most fun things that you guys get to do because it's such a nutty play. We are going to act it out with action figures again, but try to get it to picture you acting this out live because that probably would have helped you understand it better. Alright, here's the story of the Twin Menaechmi. It starts with two twin brothers that look identical and no one can tell them apart. Now, before the story starts, it says that these two brothers were with their father on a business trip, who went off into a business trip, and then they were attacked by thieves of some sort. The father escapes with one of them, but the other one was taken away. And the father says, "Oh, my poor son," whose name is Menaechmus. Got that? Menaechmus. Says, "Menaechmus, it's so sad your brother has been killed." But Menaechmus doesn't think so. And Menaechmus thinks that eventually, if he can go out and find him, his brother is still out there somewhere. So when Menaechmus grows up to be a whole grown-up man, he decides he's going to go out and find his brother somewhere. He thinks he's somewhere out in Italy. He takes his slave, whose name is Dromio, and Dromio and Menaechmus are going to go out and try to find his lost brother. Now, as it happens, his brother is not dead. His brother was in fact sold by those thieves to another guy who raises him as his own son and names him Menaechmus. So you have two twin brothers that look exactly the same, and now they have the same name. Menaechmus number 2 doesn't remember having a brother. It's kind of a vague memory in his brain, but he's not sure. He thinks that might be a dream. He doesn't really know. But he's grown up anyway, though, and he has married a lovely wife. And now this wife is very lovely, except that she's also very mean. She also hits him a lot. And the reason she hits him a lot is because she's very angry at him for a number of reasons. One reason she's very angry at him, and she's probably justified in this, is that he spends way too much time with a prostitute. Now, prostitutes are not the same in Roman times as they are for us. I mean, they're the same. They're women that have sex for money, but it was not illegal. It was something that you were permitted to do. In any case, it's not a thing that your wife will be happy about. And so his wife is very angry at him, beating him up, and he says, "Okay, I've had enough of you for now." He takes a cape from her. It's kind of this dress type thing. Kind of a rich thing. He takes it with him, and he's going to go off and visit his prostitute. So he goes to visit the prostitute. He gives her the cape, and he says, "Why don't you take this, and it's yours as a present for you, and how about if I come in and we do what prostitutes do?" And she's like, "Oh, sure, I'm fine with doing that. But you got to pay me in advance." So he pays her the money, and then he says, "Oh, I've got something I need to do in town first. Can I come back this evening?" And she says, "Sure, I'll see you this evening. I'll cook you dinner, and then we will do what prostitutes do." And so Menaechmus number 2 says that's a great idea, and so he goes off to do his business. In the meantime, Menaechmus number 1 shows up with Dromio. Now, Dromio has been around Italy, and he says, "Oh, Master, this is a very dangerous place. I've been to this place before, and the people here are dangerous. They're going to try to steal all your money." And so Menaechmus number 1 says, "Well, all right then. Here, why don't you take my money and you hold on to it, and that way it'll stay safe." And Dromio says, "Well, but then I might get robbed." He's like, "Yes, but I don't mind about that so much." Whoa. "Okay, fine." He's like, "Why don't you meet me here at such and such a time tomorrow?" And Dromio says, "Yes, master." And off he goes to take care of stuff. Now, Menaechmus number 1 is here, and the prostitute sticks her head out of the window and says, "Menaechmus, it's so good to see you." And Menaechmus is like, who are you? He says, ha ha, you're being very, very silly. Come on in, I have dinner waiting for you, and then we'll do what prostitutes do. And Menaechmi is like, duh, okay. So he goes inside, and no, that doesn't happen on stage. But you do see him leaving with the coat. It turns out that she wants him to go and have it like tailored and changed and stuff like this, so that because it didn't quite fit her. But he's apparently just slept with her and eaten that dinner, and he's like, what was Dromio saying that this was a bad part of town for? I love this town. This place is great. So he leaves, and then Menaechmi's number 2 shows up again, knocks on the door. The prostitute says, Menaechmi, you're back again so very soon. And he's like, yep, I'm here. I'm ready for dinner. And she's like, well, I don't have any dinner for you. How many dinners do you think I have? He's like, well, but you said I would come for dinner. Yeah, and you did already, so that's too bad. He's like, well, let me come on in anyway and do what prostitutes do. And she says, well, you gotta pay me first. He's like, I already did pay you. He's like, well, you didn't pay me enough. He's like, oh, you're trying to cheat me. Give me back that coat. He's like, I gave you the coat already. And he's like, oh, you're trying to cheat me. I'm going to report on you to the authorities. Because again, she's not illegal. But she still has to be able to do what she's been promising. So he's going to go report on her to the authorities. He goes out to do that. The prostitute is not worried about this at all, because she knows she hasn't done anything wrong. Menaechmi number 1 comes back in, and he's looking around trying to figure out, where is Dromio? Dromio should have been here by now. And while he's sitting there, along comes the wife. And the wife sees Menaechmi 1, thinks it's her husband, and says, what are you doing here? What are you doing? Give me back my coat. He's like, oh, who are you, you crazy person? He's like, oh, you're being so mean and horrible to me. You stole my coat. He's like, I didn't steal your coat. I never even met you before. And if I was married, I wouldn't be married to a crazy, horrible woman like you. And she's like, oh, how could you say such a mean thing? I'm going to go get my daddy. And so she goes off. She comes back with her dad. And her dad comes in, he's like, Menaechmi, are you saying mean things to my daughter? He's like, dude, I don't know who you are. I've never met you before. And after a long conversation, which is actually quite funny, these two realize that he's not kidding. He doesn't recognize them. He's never met them before. And they say, oh no, Menaechmi has gone insane. We better go get a doctor to throw him into the hospital. And Menaechmi says, maybe I have gone insane. Boogada, 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 boogada. And they say, oh, we're going to go get a doctor. They leave to get a doctor. Menaechmi 1 says, well, I'm not hanging around for this. This place is whack. And so he leaves. Menaechmi number 2 comes in, having talked to the authorities and gone nowhere with it. Along comes the father along with a doctor. And he says, there he is, doctor, tie him up. And the doctor goes, oh yeah, I'll go tie him up. And he's like, what are you doing, my father-in-law? Why are you having me tied up? He said, oh, now you recognize me, do you? Well, you didn't recognize me before. I think you were out in the sun too long. You were acting like a crazy person. He's like, I am having the worst day. My money was stolen. My prostitute turned me away. The authorities laughed at me, and now I'm being tied up. What is going on today? In comes Dromio. Dromio sees what he thinks is his master being beat up by the mean people of this town, remember? And so Dromio is apparently a very tough slave. He says, hey, leave my master alone. He beats them up, and these guys run away all scared. And he says, let me untie you, my master. He's like, oh, thank you so very much. You have done me a great service. Ooh, master, if I have done a great service, will you free me from my slavery and make me a free man? And Menaechmi number 2 says, well, I've never met you before, but sure, consider yourself a free man. And Dromio says, hooray, I've always wanted to be free. Here's the money that you gave me to take care of. And Menaechmi number 2 says, well, all right, well, I've got this money here. What else should I do with it but go to see my prostitute again? So he goes to visit his prostitute. Menaechmi number 1 comes in, and he's still wondering, where is Dromio? How come Dromio isn't here? Dromio's way late. Dromio does show up, and Dromio's like, hey, Menaechmi, how you doing? He's like, how dare you call me by my first name, because you got to call me master. What kind of a terrible slave are you? Why are you so late? He's like, but I wasn't late, and I rescued you, remember? You rescued me. No, you didn't do any such thing. Where have you been, and why are you late? He's like, and where's the money that I gave you to hang on to? He's like, but I don't have any money anymore. He's like, you lost it gambling or something like that. And he starts beating him up. And Dromio doesn't know what's going on. But Menaechmi number 1 is beating his slave for being a bad slave. Menaechmi number 2 shows up. He sees the guy that just rescued him being beat up by some guy. So he goes up and says, hey, you leave him alone. And then the two of them see each other and like, you You must be my long-lost brother. I have a long-lost brother. That wasn't just a dream. Oh, you're my brother. And Dromeo's like, oh my goodness. Well, it looks like we found him. And then they all meet each other and all ends up happy at the end. So, what's the deep and important abiding message you're supposed to get out of that? Is it stay away from any prostitutes? Or is it don't name your twin sons the same name? Or is it don't steal coats from your wife? No, none of those things. That doesn't really have a message. It's not intended to teach you anything. It's just intended to have a good time. And that's what a lot of Plautus's plays were. And a lot of Roman comedies were. So anyway, know the Twin Menaechmi, know what that one is about. Now, sadly, the end of Roman theater is not as happy as the end of Greek theater. As time went on, the bloodiness and the sexuality that was always a part of Roman theater just kind of starts to overwhelm it. All that gladiator combat stuff and things, over the course of hundreds of years, that kind of seeps into the theater and that becomes more and more what it becomes about. So it becomes very, very bloody and very sexual. Towards the end, they did some really terrible things and called it art. There would be slave girls that would be forced to perform sex scenes on stage, and that would be rape, is what that would be. There were people killed on stage. They were convicted criminals, so that's not a big deal, but yes it is. Yes it is. No matter how you feel about whether or not people should be killed for doing bad things, the idea of having them killed in front of a crowd while everyone cheers about it, that's twisted. That's twisted. So there was a lot of really terrible things that happened. It descended to the point where there really wasn't any art going on. There really isn't even much of a story. It was just blood and sex and debauchery and just terrible things. Until eventually, when Rome falls, the theater kind of falls with it. Ironically, the thing that ended up killing the theater finally was there's an emperor named Justinian who was also a Christian who was told by the Christian church, get rid of these theaters, and he closed them down. And they never really come back again. And in fact, when we get into the next thing, we'll talk about medieval Europe, and you'll notice that there's a big, long gap of time where there isn't really any theater happening in Europe. Not real theater, anyway. It survived in the sense of, like, beggars and mummers' troops, people that you would, like, they'd put on a play and people would throw pennies at them and stuff like that, but nothing in the way you can look at and say, here's a piece of great art. So anyway, that's Roman theater in a nutshell. I'm going to include some links down the bottom to some of those crash course theater things that I linked to before. I'm also going to see if I can find you some copies of the Twin Menaechmi and even Seneca's Medea. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find one of those, but if I can find them, I will link it to the description down below. In the meantime, continue practicing social distancing and staying safe, and we'll see you in a couple of more weeks, I hope, live, and I'll get another one of these up in a couple more days having to do with medieval theater. In the meantime, have a great day.